Hey Ryan, how do I get project-based learning started at my school? I've gotten some form of this question nearly every day for the last decade from engaged educators just like you. So at Magnify Learning, we've created a free download to get you started. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or teacher, go to whatispbl.com to get started on your project-based learning journey today. Are you ready to bring project-based learning to your school? The PBL Simplified podcast will help equip you for your PBL journey with weekly need-to-knows, engaging interviews, PBL showcases from facilitators in the classroom, and PBL leadership episodes to move you towards a successful implementation of PBL. Because every learner deserves to be a part of an inspiring story, and we see daily that project-based learning helps make this happen. If you want me to answer your PBL need-to-know on the podcast, visit whatispbl.com and click on Ask Ryan to submit your question. Thanks for tuning in to the PBL Simplified podcast. I'm Ryan, and I'm excited today. We've got a PBL Showcase today, and I'm going to hijack this one just like I did last month, and we're going to do a PBL Showcase at a district level to say what would a great PBL implementation look like at a district level. We typically do the classroom, we bring teachers in, have them on the podcast, and we're going to jump back into that next month. But I've hijacked these last two just because I'm getting fired up about some of these things. And I've got this showcase for a district that I think you're really going to appreciate the systematic implementation, and you can pull it for your district or for your school. The process really works the same, and we've got a download connected to the show notes that you'll be able to grab, and so you can take your notes right from there. But first, our need to know is actually a carryover from last week. Last week's podcast episode was about research around project-based learning. And I was looking at the general overarching pieces of the research. And I've got one other section that I did not include last week that I want to include. So, man, it looks like I'm hijacking the need to know as well this week. This is awesome. I am taking over. So I want to look at a few more of these research-based overarching themes from the Lucas Education Research Team, the George Lucas Educational Foundation. And I'm going to read you some of the report so that you can hear directly from there. And we'll link it in the show notes too. So hopefully I've got some teasers and you'll jump into it in a deeper level. But let's jump into this need to know of what does research look like in project-based learning. The George Lucas Education Foundation has this research that just came out. The title here is "The Evidence is Clear. Rigorous project-based learning is an effective lever for student success." 4 newly released peer-reviewed research studies show that using rigorous project-based learning in U.S. public schools has strong and positive effects on student outcomes across grade levels and subjects. Project-based learning is an inquiry-based approach in which students explore real-world problems through individual and group projects. With PBL, students make sense of why content is useful and how it might be applied. And I read some of this just to show you, we have a broad listening audience. So I don't know if you are new to PBL or if you've been doing PBL for years. If you're new, I really like this wording. And if you've been doing this for a while, you're like, hey, that's some of my wording. Like sometimes project-based learning, I don't always agree with the way that we word things, but this study is talking about it being authentic, about it having an inquiry-based approach, that we're exploring real-world problems, and that really is where we see the biggest impact. So I love that this research is backing it up. I'm also going to emphasize here in this section for this need to know just how the research team was put together and how the research was put together very rigorously, and it's not qualitative. This is deep research. But here are some of the key findings. Adding rigorous PBL to advanced placement courses improves student achievement on AP exams. That might tweak somebody's interest there. Somebody's ears just perked up. Elementary science students improved in science and areas of social and emotional learning with project-based approach. And then middle school students outperformed their peers in science and other core subjects and improved in group work when using a project-based learning approach to science instruction. English language learners in the PBL classroom also did better than a comparison group on a language proficiency test. So another reason I like this set of research briefs is that it does hit elementary, middle school, and high school. So there should be something in here for everybody. So it says, taken together, these findings add strong evidence to the idea that students thrive when hands-on, inquiry-based learning is part of their educational experience, and that rigorous PBL can be a lever for improving teaching and learning in U.S. schools. So did you hear the AP? A lot of times project-based learning can be tricky to get into AP courses because they say, well, we just have so much information to cover and we got to get through all of this. And it's not our fault, but we got to get through it. But I think this research is going to challenge that a bit. So here's what that looks like. The study is the first to harness the power of a randomized controlled trial to investigate the impact of PBL and AP exam scores. So again, it's randomized with control, and that's going to happen for each one of these. So it is deep research. The study found that students who took the project-based AP courses were more likely to receive a credit qualifying score on the AP tests, meaning they earned a score of 3 or higher on the scale of 1 to 5. So not only is PBL possible in an AP course, but it's actually better, right? You get into deeper learning, and then when your learners are on that AP test, they have a deeper view of the content and they actually perform better. School and system leaders and educators have reported that a barrier to adopting PBL can be the perception that the approach doesn't prepare students for end-of-year or other high-stakes tests, including AP exams. This research challenges that view. We get that a lot at Magnify Learning as well. Like, what about standardized test scores? Like, we still have to take state tests. What do we do about that? Do we teach to the test? And I think this is a good example. Like, we're looking at AP, which is a difficult test, right? It's a difficult test to take. It's a difficult test to prepare learners for. And it's doing better. Like, we are getting to deeper learning. Like, yes, standardized test scores do go up when we're doing project-based learning. And this research, again, is starting to show us that. One of the other studies is in a third grade science program. Again, it's a randomized controlled test or research brief. So the significant effects persisted across schools with differing racial and ethnic makeups and household income levels and in various regions of the state, providing strong evidence that this approach is beneficial for all students. So at the heart of some of this is research is around equity. Like, how are we serving all of our learners? And project-based learning gives you the flexibility to do that. It gives all of our learners context to learning so that they can achieve more. And again, obviously, I'm getting pretty excited about the research. And next week, we're going to dive in deeper to each one of these studies and really get in the weeds so that you can see a little bit more, a little bit deeper, because everybody wants to know, like, well, where did this research take place? How many learners were there? What did it really look like? And I think they did a really great job of making sure that it does actually apply for all learners. So again, we'll link it and you'll be able to dive into it yourself. So the same happens for, there's another elementary study. Researchers conducted the study in high poverty, low performing schools, and the majority of participating students were from underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. Poor students and underserved minorities are generally more likely to receive instruction that is focused on basic reading and math skills, and less likely to emphasize the critical thinking and discussion skills found in rigorous PBL instruction. This study supports the view that that should change. And this is, again, I talked about it last week, but this is one that we do run into. Like, hey, my learners can't do the basic language arts and math skills. How are they going to do PBL? And it's really the wrong question. It's because they need those things, they need PBL. They need the additional context of why they're learning things so they can be more engaged. They can figure out how it applies to them. And then they're more apt to learn these things because they have more handholds to connect the learning to. So it's not actually, it's kind of the cart before the horse, or putting the caboose before the engine. You need project-based learning to bring your learners into a mastery of those basic skills. In the conclusion, says, moreover, researchers conducted the studies in diverse districts with large percentages of traditionally underserved students, indicating project-based learning can be a powerful lever for improving equity in U.S. schools. And then, of course, my heartbeat is in professional learning and professional development. It says professional learning for teachers. It was closely tied to core subject matter content. Projects were central to each curriculum, not an add-on or a minor feature. So this was not in a PBL time. This was not separate from the regular curriculum. This was doing project-based learning in their core subject areas. It was doing project-based learning as their curriculum. And when you do that, you give context, you give meaning, you give a why to the learning, and that's when we see these fantastic results, and that's what this study really brings out. So I'm super excited about that. We'll link again to some of this in the show notes, and then tune in next week. And again, share these, because this is where people say, well, where's the research behind PBL? How do you know PBL works? Like, this is a brief that really spells this out well for us. And so it's a good one to share, and you'll want to tune in as well. So next week, we'll get more into the research. But right now, we're going to do a PBL showcase around a PBL district. So in the PBL Showcase episodes, we do them once a month, and we're really trying to highlight some of the great work that's out there. And a lot of times we bring a teacher onto the podcast so that we can interview them. You can hear directly from them. But I've hijacked the last one, and I'm going to hijack this one as well. And what I want to do here is I want to spell out a district implementation. So this particular one, they'll remain nameless for now because we're in the middle of implementation, but it's a larger district, and I'm going to lay out the steps that they took to get where they are. And then we also have a download for you. Again, it'll be in the show notes that'll walk you through this. So you don't have to take notes on every one. We'll actually have some notes on there for you. So what we first suggest that you do if you're going to implement as a district or a school is that you just build your PBL knowledge. You need to know something about project-based learning. You don't have to know everything, but you need to know something, and you probably want to bring some people along with you. So can you do a book study, share this podcast or the video series? And that's not a plug for the podcast. It's that you need to know some things about project-based learning so that you can start to understand what good project-based learning is and what maybe mediocre project-based learning is, or what a project is. So another great way to get started is to go visit a PBL school. If you know a project-based learning school in your area, or maybe you're going to travel, go see really great work in action. At Magnify Learning, we have demonstration sites where you can go see that. We can send you down to Babcock Ranch in Florida. We can send you to Indianapolis. We can send you out to Missouri, Neosho, Missouri. They're doing really great work in all these different places. And you can walk into any of their buildings and you'll see really great stuff. So there are places where really great PBL is happening. If I can help you out with that, you can actually just go to whatispbl.com. And there's a big button there that says Ask Ryan. Just go and ask Ryan and say, hey, Ryan, can you hook me up with one of those places and get me a tour? And it's like, yes, we can. We'd love to do that because it's a great first step. So once you realize that as a building leader or a district leader that, yes, project-based learning is the direction you want to go, then we suggest you create some design days. And we can help you do this. We do this with districts. And this is where you start to spell out, like, what would this look like? It typically starts with like an ideal graduate scenario, and it doesn't have to be formalized necessarily because that can be a big endeavor in a district. But what is it you want your graduates to leave with? What do you want them to be able to know, say, and do? And when you do that, when you lay those things out, it's typically things like problem solving, critical thinking, presenting well, talking to adults. It's not usually slope-intercept form, right? So what we find is that it's a lot of the employability skills is what you really want them to leave. Either the elementary, the middle school, or the high school, as you vertically look at those ideas and you lay them out, it's typically the employability skills that you want them to have more so than the content base. Now, again, we're not ignoring content-based standards. Like, we're going to do all of this through content, and a lot of that content is super important for them being successful in their next step of their journey. We also know that there are some higher level skills that they need. So a design day can help you make sure that this is sustainable. That's a word I like to use a lot. Do not want this to be a flash in the pan where you say, hey, everybody do this. And everybody does one PBL unit and then it just goes away and we pretend that we do PBL. But what's it look like to have a 3-year plan for this? Like, if you were going to roll this out and you were going to do it well and everybody was going to be confident, what would you do over 3 years? And that's what we do in those design days. We do it at the district level with assistant superintendents. You can do it at the building level with, you as a principal, if that's your role in your AP or your leadership team. But some way you need to design this out. At that point, you can develop a PBL core team. So we call this a core team or a learning team. Somebody that's going to find out if project-based learning works in your district or your school. And what we found in this district that we're talking about today is that they started actually with a school. One of their schools jumped in and took project-based learning on, and they were kind of the flagship for that. And the next thing is professional development opportunities. They went through a PBL Jumpstart. They went through Advanced. They got people certified. So they have PBL certified teachers that can train and do train with us at Magnify Learning across the country. And when they go back to their home school, they're great trainers there too. So they're training new hires, they're training staff, they're leading professional development. They are the boots on the ground believers in project-based learning. So they're the go-tos and they're speaking to it, not just you as the leader. So you really want to develop a grassroots movement that's sustainable. So having that core team in place, having them well-trained is really, really important. At that point, we want you to be a PBL advocate for your facilitators, for your teachers in the classroom. Like, somebody needs to make sure that project-based learning can stay in the forefront and that it can thrive and that it's a positive thing for your teachers to do. So what does that look like? It looks like you step forward preemptively to look at your evaluation form. Does your evaluation form put project-based learning on the right side, up towards the 5, right, and not the 2? And if you have a really great evaluation form, it really should. If you have a great evaluation form, you're looking for positive student outcomes, student ownership, student empowerment. And a lot of those things are actually more difficult with traditional teaching. And project-based learning can be the key to helping your teachers get there. So looking at that evaluation form can actually be a positive in bringing project-based learning in. And that's exactly what this district did. So you want to make sure that your other district initiatives are not contradicting the direction, the vision that you're bringing through project-based learning. So you need to be that advocate. At that point, you need to get your core team, you need to get people that are excited about project-based learning, you need to get them collaboration opportunities. At the district level, that means that you need to get principals together so that they have time to collaborate. At the building level, that means you need to get teachers time. Yep, time. And teachers always ask for time, but it can't just be, just like in the classroom, it can't just be open time that says go. It's structured collaboration time with some objectives and deliverables that they present. And when you do that, you get a lot of bang for your buck, and you start to get a lot of grassroots movement when you give your teachers time to collaborate on what worked in their classrooms, what new resources they have, and what they need moving forward. The other thing you need to do, the next step, is to observe PBL in action. If you're a leader, you don't have to know every little bit of a PBL unit. You should probably know the 6 steps. It'll be in my book, PBL Simplified. Comes out January 17th. You can pre-order right now. We also have some resources that can get you there. You should know the general idea of project-based learning. You don't have to be able to make a PBL unit as a leader, but you need to go and see an entry event. You need to go see a need-to-know session. You need to go see presentations. Get out there, see what's happening. Make sure it aligns with your vision, if nothing else, but it's also a great learning opportunity for you. And then we've got support PBL in action. How can you, as a leader, serve as a community partner? Maybe on a presentation, maybe in a need-to-know session. How can you maybe find some grants for your PBL teachers? Where can you help them find community partners? Maybe they need somebody from the Humane Society, and you can go out and make that connection. Supporting them as they move forward in this new endeavor is really, really important. Be in those classrooms, give some positive feedback where you see really positive things. And then the last one we have is to build PBL awareness. And that sounds really general, and it is. When we say PBL awareness, that's parents, community partners. Do they know about project-based learning? Likely not. It's probably not how they did school when they were in school. Now, once you explain it and you make them aware, it's exactly what everybody thinks should be happening in education. That we should be empowering learners, we should be connecting them with community partners, they should be doing real-world work, that they're learning interview skills, they're learning how to speak in front of adults, they're learning how to problem solve. If you say those things, then people are on board. If you don't, you let other people tell your story, they're going to start guessing what project-based learning is. And when that happens, that can be detrimental. You want to make sure that you're defining what project-based learning means for your district and your school. And as you do that, you will find that you get more and more support for your project-based learning movement. And then really you run through those steps again and again. At the district level, in this PBL Showcase with this district, they went through the same process with different schools. So they got different schools on board this way. They did design days. They gave time for collaboration. They supported the work. And you go back and you do it again with the next wave. If you're in a school building and you're a principal, building leader, then you go through this with your different teachers. Get the next group to plan some things out. Give them some time to collaborate and then support them as they implement. But just as we found the research that we heard in the last podcast episode and we'll hear in next week's episode, is they also need sustained professional development. You need to get them training. It's not enough to say, go find a PBL unit on Teachers Pay Teachers and implement it this semester. You will not get the results that this research is talking about. There are definitely some bigger shifts in empowering learners. There are some structures. It's all laid out there. We have the structures. We have the path now. But you need your teachers to be in sustained professional development if you want to have the same results of that study. And this is a pathway that this district has used to successfully roll out project-based learning. And you can do the same thing in your district or your school. And if this brings up more questions than answers, awesome. go to whatispbl.com and click on Ask Ryan and put your question in there, and I'll be happy to answer it on the podcast. In the meantime, I hope that this process and this research that we're putting out there will help you engage your learners, tackle boredom, and transform your classrooms.